Yo, what's good, everybody, man? And welcome to the Leadership Podcast. It's your boy PT. Thank you for dropping in, man. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, hit that or follow me. You can follow me on any of the platforms. Peyton PT, Tomlin. I'm out there. That's the hook. Go ahead and look for me, man. The question that I have today, though, is have you noticed in your work environment that everything is blamed on leadership? Everything. We have become this culture where if people aren't developing better, is leadership problem. If the toilets don't work, well, we need stronger leadership. We need to get our people in training. And we don't know. You hear leadership, but it's like, what leadership? Are you talking about like the person right here or the person right there or the person all the way at the top? Like, where does that leadership thing end or start? Or at this point, we don't know. We just throw that term around so easily nowadays to the point that we got leaders saying, well, I guess it's my fault that nothing is working in the organization. And we all know that leadership alone does not produce performance. It just doesn't do it. And a lot of organizations, they have great leaders, right? But they struggle to execute because we got to this point where it's like, well, the leader's supposed to do everything, welcome me to the building and buy me lunch, and there's servant leadership, and then there's 18 ways to be a better leader. And all of those count, all of those play a part. But in the corporate environment, in the work environment, I don't care where you're working, I don't care if you're Starbucks or you're Fortune 500, three areas that I believe that if you could get these things right, it makes for a great culture, effective work conditions. And that is leadership, management, and the one thing that people don't talk about anymore, they almost kind of get left out of the corporate structure or the work environment. There is a followership element here that we tend not to do it. And we're going to break this down. I'm going to break down each one of these real quick, right? This won't be a very long talk, but it'll probably be long enough, hopefully, that I can get it all out. I remember when I first got into the military, when we first got in there, and they're creating us to be leaders, right? Because the job of the leader is to create more leaders. But I remember my sergeant or whoever was used to always say, before you can be a great leader, you have to be a great follower. And it seems, and I never really understood what that meant, right? But as I matured, it makes all the sense. I think I was a good leader, and I don't think a good follower, I don't think that means being submissive or like just we do whatever you say, right? We're not robots here. But there's a way of challenging things. There's a way of growing. There's a time to sit back and just learn and observe and how to do that. But we'll touch into that just a little bit more. Leadership is definitely important. So I don't want to make that mistake or make it seem like I'm saying leadership isn't important. Leadership is great, but leadership does not execute the work. Leadership is not at the bottom doing the work. Leadership is not in charge of the mid-level management that needs to take place. Yes, leadership might hire those people. Leadership might be ultimately responsible, but there's a lot of layers in here before you get to that top leadership person to find out fault. Organizations will fail if you think the leader could just come down here and give you good words, right? So we're like, we're just going to be inspired. All we need is a great speech, like on the movies, right? They come out and give this great speech, and everybody like, yay, let's go, right? And then they go and they perform this magical feat. Well, in the real world, that speech will need to be given every day. It would definitely need to be given every day, especially if you don't have everything around it to make this organization perform at its peak. And that's what this is about. So it's not necessarily about just leadership or just management or just the followers, right? The followership. What it is these three forces that have to work together in order for things to operate and you get the organization performance metrics that you're looking for. If one of these are off, then it's all off, right? There's 3 of them, but you gotta have them all. This isn't one of those scenarios where you only get to pick 2, right? No, you gotta have them all, and that's where I think we struggle sometimes as organizations to get the best out of the organization, out of the leaders, out of our management force, out of our workers. And that's where it gets tough, right? So let's break this down real quick. So leaders, what are they responsible for, right? They're responsible for direction. They're responsible for the vision. They're responsible for culture, and they're responsible for influence. Leadership generally is going to answer the question, where are we going? Right? You got to have a vision. If everyone sees the vision before you, you're not the leader. John Maxwell, 101, right? You have to plan down the road. So leadership isn't just serving, like we serve people and bring them pizza, and we give great speeches to try to motivate them, and we make everybody happy, and we try to appease everybody, right? But that's not what they're there for. They are there to set direction, vision, put us on the course of where we need to go. And then once that is created, what comes next, or the way that this flows, in my theory, is that you got to have management. Management has to be the structure, the process, the holding the people accountable, the discipline in that organization. So we have that vision, but now we need this discipline mechanism around it. And I think sometimes we get confused, right? This goes back to what we call if you're in a position, you're a leader. Well, not necessarily. Now, you don't have the vision and all that other stuff, right? There are the characteristics of leaders that we could break down here, but we're going to talk about the overall concept of titles within the construct of an organization, or a structured organization, right? Or a work performance based element. And that is why you need these 3 things. It's one thing for me to come in and be the leader and set the vision and the goals, but do I have the management structure around me to make sure that it works? Do we have the disciplined workflow? Do we have a workflow? Do we have force and functions where we can communicate? Are we transparent in how we are operating our jobs? Are we reporting up, and are we taking what we get up and then report back down? So are we working together as leadership and as management? Are they lock sync together, or are they separated? And there's organizations, and maybe some of the places that you work, where either the leadership isn't giving you those where are we going questions, right? The direction and the vision, and you're wondering, why is the culture so bad? Well, where's the leader? I don't know. I never haven't seen a leader, right? And that's a problem. That is a problem. The leader has to be upfront. The leader has to walk the talk. The leader has to do those things. But what I'm getting at is that it doesn't fall all on the leader, right? The leader's going to hire the people to get into these management spots and hopefully hold them accountable. Those people got to hold themselves accountable as well. The paychecks are coming to everybody. So everyone has to earn that paycheck. So it ain't just like, well, I'm not going to do it because I didn't get a rah-rah speech today. Well, not a rah-rah speech shouldn't need to come for you to do your job, to make sure that that middle management, that those structures, that those disciplines, that those processes, that those guardrails are all in place to make sure that that vision that we have has a chance of being successful. And then from there, you're going to get down to what I call followership, because that's how they taught me in the military. But it's also the workforce that is executing that vision. Middle management ain't executing it. Leadership isn't executing it. That third level, that followership level, that workforce is executing the work, and they don't get off. You don't get to get off because no one has asked you about your cat, or they don't know all your kids, or all of that, right? You still come to work. You applied for the job. You got the job that you applied for. Now you come to work, and you should have a certain accountability to yourself about the performance that you put there. And I get that it gets, sometimes when you don't have those 3 things aligned, it does get complicated to do that job, right? When you don't have the management structure, then you don't have the vision or the culture or the communication. But this is why I think it's so important to focus on this element of these three pieces that need to be together in order to get what becomes that organizational performance metric. That is how you become an efficient and effective organization. Every organization that I've been where we've been a high producing organization and whatever it is, whether it was mission related stuff or rather we're sitting here talking about when I was young and I worked in a warehouse, right? The structure was there, the leadership was there, the tasks were clear, right? Clarity is kindness. And that has to trickle down and trickle back up amongst all three people. They're all accountable for making sure that we are all clear on what we're doing and the expectations and the outcomes. So we can't just say, well, it's leadership's fault. Yeah, that's easy to say. But was the structure also in place? Where's that middle management at? Was that in place? And then the task that was pushed down to the followers who are executing the vision and utilizing those management systems and processes, were you able to do it? And when you couldn't do it, did you have communication forcing functions where y'all were able to communicate that up to your leadership in a safe environment where people didn't just yell at you because you wasn't sure, whatever the case, and then push that back up to leadership to get more guidance, to then push it back down through clarity, back through this. You see how this works? When you have that flow, when you have that safety, where you have the ability for everyone to communicate with each other, it's also not just the leader's responsibility to make sure that goes. Because as we know, leadership is a choice. Because you're in a position doesn't mean you're a leader. Because you're in a position is because you apply for a job and you told someone that you can make this thing happen and they said, we're going to give you a chance. But leadership is also abstract, right? Not everyone's going to see a leader and be like, that's the leader that we all want to follow. I use this all the time. You know, they killed Jesus. They shot Martin Luther King, right? A lot of these people who was about peace and great leaders, they were taken out because people did not agree with them or like them. So don't think that every leader is going to be liked. It's not about do you like this leader or not. It's about is the leader being efficient and effective in what they're doing. I've been in organizations where once again people point out to the leader as to why they're not being successful. But when I dive deeper into it and ask them, well, what are you doing? You start to find out what they're doing is rebelling. So what they're not doing is being good. They're not practicing followership. They're not understanding that you don't hold the accountability, right? So it's kind of hard to want to be the top person with no accountability or responsibility. So you think because I present something to you and you say no to me, I'm destroyed. My feelings are hurt. This is a bad leader. How could they not see that my idea was the best idea? They're terrible. And that happens all the time. And once that starts to happen, people starts to pick sides, right? Because you're going to tell everyone that you can how the leader didn't do this for you or how middle management isn't holding this person accountable for things that you think you know that you don't know. And that's where a lot of the destruction comes into place, just to be honest, from my opinion. Yeah, terrible leaders. You do have some bad leaders. I won't say we don't, right? But we take there's a lot of information and courses and books that focuses on developing that leader. And sometimes it's just the personality. Sometimes they have to grow. There's a lot of elements in it, right? Because leadership is a journey. What we don't focus on is how the people who have to follow these leaders are supposed to act. And that goes back to what I was saying in the military. When I was in the military, you got to be a good follower in order to be a good leader. And we're missing that boat. And if you don't have that, and if that's not working, then that's tearing organizations up, right? Management plays a part, leadership plays a part, but so does the followers. They play a part as well. And what we have to now do is get back to the basics of it's not just creating everyone from the time they're 3 and telling everybody that they're leaders. No, we got to tell people that you have to learn how to be a great follower. You have to learn how to trust someone else's guidance and directions. You have to, even when you disagree with it, because you don't know all the answers, right? Your viewpoint is like this. But when you get to the top of that pyramid, I see all of this, right? So that's where it gets tough, because when you're like this, you think you know everything. And when you get to that management level, you're like this and you think you know everything. But here's the thing, when you're at the top, you see it all and you understand that plan. You understand that 3-year plan, that 5-year plan. At least you should. And if you don't, well, this is where we could now point back to the leader and some faults and some gaps there. But this is one of the topics that I definitely wanted to talk about, because what I see more and more is just how we blame leaders for everything. And it's one of those things, and especially because, as you see, I was still a fan, and I go back to just thinking like how our coach Mike Tomlin took so many bullets for the organization, but there's so many people between the players and Tomlin, right? In professional football, this isn't college. So there's so many people, and those professional football players are making millions of dollars to jump on the football. Can't blame the coach when he's coaching them and giving the vision and telling them what needs to be to do. And then the position coaches are telling them and have them do it in practice. And then game time comes and they don't do it. Does that sound like your environment? Does that sound like your working environment? And then you know what? Everyone goes, well, it was the coach's fault that he didn't jump on the ball. And that's where we don't take self-accountability on ourselves. And we have to do a better job at that. We want these corporations to thrive. The corporations want to thrive. But we got to get out of this. Let's just keep throwing one workshop leadership thing at people, and hopefully they could come back and get better and fix the problem. No, we need to fix all three. We got to get all three in alignment. And that kind of falls in the same category when I teach agile. So this isn't just like, oh, PT, you just tripping because no, it's none of that. The agile format is pretty much the same, right? It's a structured approach. And through that structured approach, there are forcing functions in it to make sure that the communication at every level is aligned. And that's what we have to get organizations back to, the alignment and how to get back to that alignment. So, do we still have leadership problems? We do. Do we still have management problems? We do. Do we still have followership problems? We do. But if an organization wants real performance, then they got to just stop asking that one question about, is it just the leader? Do we have strong leadership? I think instead they got to start asking things like, do we have clear direction? Is our management system strong? Does the workforce take ownership of what they do? And that is something that we could start doing. That is something that my company does. That is what I preach. That is what I teach. We got to have alignment or the company won't be successful. It's just that simple. That's all I got for you today. If you like this, definitely hit the follow, do the subscribe thing. Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. All this stuff will be in the information in the bio. With that said, as always, stay real. I'm out.